Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
I say all the time, I try to get this message out as often as possible. At the time that Layla vanished, I was really angry at her. And I was struggling so hard to understand her. And I was just pissed. I was so mad, like, at her behaviors and the things that she was doing and the things that she had done. I mean, she had put us through some shit, really. And I wish that I had let go of some of that anger. I wish that I handled it better. And so, if you are a parent and you are struggling in this type of a situation, I want you to just stop for a moment and imagine if they just disappeared one day. Imagine how you would feel, and I want you to really think about it. Because now, in retrospect, all these months without her, I can see all of the things that I could have done differently, but I didn't have the emotional capacity to because I was so angry at her.
That's Jennifer Santanello, the mother of Layla Santanello, a 20-year-old woman who went missing in Kingsport, Tennessee in June of 2023. This is the Silver Linings Handbook podcast. I'm Jason Blair. Jennifer Santanello has spent the last 20 months searching for her daughter Layla, who vanished on a June night in 2023 in Kingsport, Tennessee. This is a second of 2 episodes where Jennifer and I discuss Layla, her case, the ambiguous grief surrounding the loss, and what keeps her driving to search for her daughter and to bring her daughter home. Jennifer and I also discuss some of the challenges of getting attention for missing persons cases, particularly those that involve issues like mental illness, poverty, homelessness, or drug addiction. I'm going to dive right back into our conversation now, but if you haven't had a chance to listen to the first episode, I recommend you go back and you give it a listen. And with that, so we're like in the spring right now, spring of 2023. Is that right?
Yes.
And so where'd she go when she moved out from?
Back to Michael's mom's.
Okay.
They moved back in with his mom. And
how it sounds like from what I've read that it was a rocky return, because am I right that there was some kind of fight or argument that happened around that time that led her
well,
to this
there
one?
were quite a few, really. Like there was always sort of drama happening, and Layla was always the scapegoat. At least that's the way it was, told
Felt.
to me.
Yeah.
Right. And so it always seemed like there was one point where her and Michael showed up at my mom's house in the middle of the night, and she was all beat up, had bite marks. Wow. And yeah, like his mom had gone after her, and like, somebody else in the family. I don't know. It was just craziness. And, even my mom was like, please don't go back there. Like, and, she kept going, and she just was like the whooping boy for them. It was just craziness. Not that she was an angel, because she was, actively doing things she shouldn't have been doing and whatever, but like,
But nobody deserves that.
no. So at some point I ended up having to file for temporary custody the day after Nova Grace's second birthday.
From the way you're describing it, it doesn't sound like she was just potentially in an abusive relationship with
Right.
him. She was in an abusive relationship with the entire family.
There's just a lot of craziness going on, according to her.
So you're really wondering about her judgment at this point.
Yes.
Yes, like
Yes.
there is something you're moving from the kind of, it sounds like, the phase of like, why are you not spending time with your kid, to the you should not be spending time with your kid. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, that makes complete sense to me. Um, and so was this just a couple weeks before she
So
disappeared?
This was April of 23. And they didn't show up to the birthday party. But they did show up at like 9:30, 10 o'clock that night and insist on taking Nova Grace with them. We had this whole big argument. It was bedtime and like she had just had a bath and she was ready for bed. And Layla and Michael, like it was more Michael. Like, honest to goodness, it was more I'm not going back there without this baby. I'm gonna look like an asshole. Like that, he kept saying stuff like that. Like he must have told them he was coming here to put his foot down. You know what I mean? And tell me who's boss and who can boss Layla and Nova around. And he kept saying over and over again, I'm not going back there without this baby. He was clearly intoxicated. He tried to put Nova in the back of his friend's truck 3 different times without a car seat and tried to lie and tell me there was a car seat. And I was standing right there. I could see that there was no car seat. Like, it was insane.
So
So
something off. Yeah.
at the time, Opie was at the grocery store getting juice and stuff, and the car seat was in the car with him. So he was like stalling, hoping that they would just like get over it and leave before he got home. And then on the way home, he actually called the police department and he told them like what was going on. And the police were like, "Sir, your best bet is to just let her have the car seat and send them on their way because she has every right to her child. It doesn't matter what time of night it is, doesn't matter where she plans on taking the child. Unless you are seeing her actively abuse or neglect the child, there's nothing we can do."
Right.
So they took her and I didn't sleep a wink that night because I was so upset. First of all, there was a blow up
Makes sense.
jacuzzi in the backyard and these people are clearly not of sound mind. And like, is she going to drown in the jacuzzi? Like, I don't know what's going to happen. I was freaking out, completely freaking out. And at that point, I stopped feeling like I was keeping Nova safe. Like, if I can't keep her in the house overnight because Layla can just walk in and take her wherever she wants, that's like she's not safe, you
Right.
know?
No,
And it's
I mean, it makes complete sense to me when I'm listening to you talk, that like any, sort of, and I don't even mean sobriety in the traditional sense, any sober-headed person looking at the situation would be like, somebody needs to intervene
right,
to help, like, not just Nova Grace, but like also, like, if I'm just imagining for Layla, like, and you talked about how devoted she was to her. If during this time where she's using and she's not in her right mind, God forbid she did something that caused
right,
harm to her daughter, it could be something that you don't. I mean, she's already dealing with so much, the addiction, the
right.
loss, that was hard to recover from. And if something had happened to that child, I
Yeah,
it probably would have been too much weight to bear.
yeah.
So the custody proceedings were going on. She was living back at his house with his family. What was it that caused her to eventually leave his house? Do you know? Were you able to figure it out?
It was an argument. There was some type of an argument. And again, Layla ended up being the scapegoat. Michael was arguing with somebody in the family, and then he put whatever they were arguing about, like he blamed Layla. He put it off on her. There was like a physical altercation. And Layla and Michael said something to her that sort of like broke the spell. He said to her, "You really need to get your shit together." And I know my kid, and I know at that moment the real Layla popped out and was like, "Really? I'll show you. I'll
Yeah.
show you
Well,
who needs to get their shit
and
together."
and that's like also out of like that line, you need to get your shit together, is out of the playbook of like
Yeah.
controlling behaviors, like where you hear people say like, well, nobody really cares about you. Nobody, really loves you. You need to pull your stuff together. That's like, those are to me, and I'm not saying every instance that those words are used, but a lot of times those instances are used to sort of try and beat somebody down and control them. And it sounds like he was like, yeah, no, that's not gonna, that kind of like sparked her.
Yeah.
And so she left. Do you
She
know where
packed
she
up all of her stuff and she left. And she spent that first night with a girl, and they rode around all night trying to find a certain particular substance.
Mhm.
And then she ended up with another group of friends, but this group of friends was also friends with Michael. And so Saturday night, she ends up at this one house where everybody was tore up. The rumor is that they all got a hold of some like straight elephant tranquilizer, and one of the people who left the party that night wrecked their car, and there was just like a lot of weird stuff going on that night. And she left that house party ish, whatever was going on, with another friend. And this friend, I truly believe, was just trying to help her.
Mm.
And he brought her home to his place, and she showered and she slept and she ate. He was just trying to like get her on her
Take
feet,
care of
and
her.
she hadn't slept in a couple of days, and she was dirty and she hadn't eaten, and so he was like helping her out. Now that is at that point is when she messaged me. He had given her a tablet to use because she had left. She didn't have a phone. He kept the phone because technically it was his, even though he got hers taken away, but whatever. And so that's when I got the messages from her. So Saturday night, I was cooking supper. I had Nova Grace here. I had my niece and nephew here. I had like there were so many kids here, and there was a lot going on. And I get this message from Michael, and it was just really weird because as long as they had been together, they were always together. They were never separate. So him like asking me, do I know where Layla is? Do I know if she's in jail? Just like threw me off completely. Like what? And so at that time, my niece Trish was staying with me, and Trish is also an addict. And at the time, she was clean. And like I had helped her detox and all the things. And she had been staying with me. And I ran downstairs and I was like, can you, because she had like an app that she could look and see who had been arrested and like who was in jail or whatever. And so I was like, can you go on the app and see if we could find Layla in any of like the surrounding counties? And she was like, yeah, I'll check. And she couldn't find her. And then I called some of the hospitals, and she wasn't at the hospitals either. And I was like, well,
That's
hopefully,
gotta be a scary moment for anybody,
yes.
right? To get a
And
message
so,
from someone close to your
right.
child asking if they were in jail, or it's such a weird, yeah, yeah.
It was so weird. It was weird, weird, weird. And so I say to Trish, no, actually, I think Trish was like, they're probably just in a fight, and she's just, needs some time to cool off and da 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 da. And I was like, all right, okay, great. So I go to bed, and when I woke up in the morning, she had messaged me. So he was actually messaging me from her Facebook Messenger account
Mhm. Mhm.
because she when she left, she was still logged in on his phone or whatever.
Right.
And I'm sure like they had automatic passwords set up so he could toggle between both. So
Yep.
she must have checked her messages and saw Hay was talking to me and had me all freaked out. And she just said, Mom, I'm okay. And when I woke up, I was like, oh my God, thank God. It was like 6 a.m. and I was like, oh, thank God. Like, where are you? What's going on? I asked a couple of questions. She seemed very hesitant to want to answer them. And I got the feeling that it was because he could see,
See the messages. Yep. Yep.
right.
Yep.
And so I was like, okay, I'm not gonna get too deep into it. Like, she's saying she's okay. I'm not gonna pry right now. I figure she'll call me at some point and tell me about it. And so, the last thing that I said to her was, I love you. And the last thing she said to me was, I love you so much more. And I went on about my day thinking she was fine. Um, 24 hours later, I hear from Michael again, and he is going, and I feel like I'm being manipulated. He is laying it on super thick. And this is my Layla. Like, my Layla is tough and she's strong and she's very street smart and she's fearless. And so, like, I'm trying not to freak out. I'm trying not to let his words freak me out. But he is like going hard, man. Like, you don't know the crazy things that could happen around here. And I just, it was not fun.
You think he was
And
do you think he was just trying to find her to look for
yes, I think
he
he
was
was
just
trying
trying to
to
get you to find her
manipulate. Yeah, I think he was trying to
into telling
manipulate
her.
me into finding her for him.
Yeah. And is that the same day or it was the day after where there was the altercation at the hotel she was
Okay.
staying in? Because I remember reading that people had seen her at the hotel, that she was going door to door, she was barefoot, she looked like she was distressed or paranoid.
So, okay. She ended up leaving that house that she was at where the guy gave her the tablet, right?
Mhm.
Because there was an altercation there, but it didn't really have anything to do with Layla. But like, all of Layla's things plus the tablet all got stolen during the chaos and the ruckus. So she leaves with some guy that she doesn't know very well, and they end up at the AmeriCorps Hotel.
Mm,
Okay.
okay.
And she ended up leaving the room. I still don't know exactly why. She ends up leaving the room, going out to the parking lot. I don't know if she's just getting air or what was going on, but then she couldn't find her way back to the room. She couldn't remember what room she was in. So, I don't know what all they were doing in that room, but it's possible that they were using, and she got herself turned around, and
So she was going to door to figure out what
she was
room.
trying to figure out how to get back to the room she was in.
Yep.
And she was like disturbing people. So yes, management did come out and talk to her, according to witnesses, and say to her, like, like, you're disrupting the people. Like, you can't do that. If I have to come talk to you again, I'm gonna have to call the law and put you on the no trespass list or whatever, and blah blah blah. So then she goes and she like hides in the laundry room. And the laundry room is like this big glass room, so she could like see what all was going on in the courtyard and stuff, but like she was like hiding.
Yep.
And then she sees law enforcement pull in. And, it's possible she assumed that they were there for her. So the next thing you know, like, law enforcement pulls in, they were dealing with something else entirely. They had nothing to do with her. And she just takes off and runs through the
Ah.
courtyard. At the end of the courtyard is where the woods start. And she ran into those woods and stayed there all night.
So that explains why she went out into the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she stayed there all night, came out of the woods in the morning, but you guys by that point hadn't been in touch with her, made the decision to, you know, wait,
Yes.
but then
So
decided to report her missing. What happened at that point? She was still in the woods at that point?
she was still in the woods. So what? Okay. Around like 8, 9 o'clock, Layla's biological father in New Jersey and I had a conversation. And I was like, okay. I was going by, like, I thought with an adult, you had to wait 48 hours to report them missing.
Mm,
And I
a
had heard
myth.
from her the
The
morning
myth.
before.
Yeah, that's a myth that a lot of people run
Oh, I know.
into. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I did not know this. So I say to him, it's 8 a.m. tomorrow. If she hasn't called me by then, we'll call it in together. Well, Dad calls the station around midnight that night, and he's asking questions like, can I report her missing? She is an adult, but like, I'm kind of worried, and I need somebody to lay eyes on her, and blah, 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 blah. And they were like, yeah, you can go ahead and report her missing. So they took, what information he had. And at 2 a.m., detectives knocked on Michael Thompson's door, and Michael Thompson was home, and his mom was home, and his brother was home. Everybody was home, and everybody cooperated, and like there was no trouble. Everything was fine. And the next day, they got to like really starting to like track Layla and retrace all of her steps. And by then, my niece Trish had gotten like basically all the information from who Layla was with Friday to who she was with Saturday to who she was with Sunday, but we still didn't know who she was with Monday. That's where we kind of lost her.
That's at
So
the hotel.
yeah, we lost her when she went to the hotel. So Tuesday afternoon on the 27th, I called the detective to check in. And that's when he told me she was on camera last night at the AmeriCorps Hotel. And I was like, okay. At that point, we all thought that she was staying in the AmeriCorps Hotel. We all thought she had shacked up with somebody or, got with a group of friends and was hanging out at that hotel. We did not know that she had come out of those woods and walked off yet. Nobody knew that yet. On Wednesday, one of the witnesses had given us the room number Layla was supposedly staying in. And Opie was at work. I had the baby. So I called my ex-boyfriend who like was still very close with Layla because he helped raise her. And I was like, can you do me a favor? Can you go over to the AmeriCorps, go to this room, knock on the door, and if Layla's there, tell her to call me. We filed the missing persons report and we're worried and I just need eyes on her. And he was like, well, what if I can't get her to come with me? I said, she doesn't have to come with you. If she doesn't want to come home, if she doesn't want to get help, if she doesn't want those things, that's fine. I just need to know that she's okay. I was like, make sure she eats something, make sure she gets something to drink. Like, just go make sure she's okay.
Yeah,
He
just
said, okay.
Put eyes on my daughter for me.
Yes. Fill her belly. Like, whatever. Just go find her. So he goes up there with a friend and he sends the friend up to the room to knock on the door. He's sitting in this car in the parking lot. Nobody's coming to the door. And like the way he says it when he tells the story, he's like, they came out of the shadows, like, and it was Michael and two of Michael's friends who I guess were also at the AmeriCorps, also staking the place out. Yes. And so
they had figured out that she was there.
yes. And so they approached Mike, my ex, and everybody, they kind of have a powwow and they're all like swapping information. And, we heard she was there and here and all these things. And then they all started looking, like canvassing, talking to people. They walked down the Greenbelt and they stopped at a bunch of businesses and they were asking questions, showing her picture, like canvassing the area. And Michael is the one who came up with the witnesses at the warehouse saw her come out and cross the field that morning. And then she went down the Greenbelt and the lady at the ice cream shop, which was like a 15-minute walk down the Greenbelt, lady at the ice cream shop said that Layla was there and that she gave her ice cream and something to drink and that Layla was all upset and she had a fight with her boyfriend and like all this stuff. And that night,
did that end up being true?
the marble slab was not true. The marble slab was not true.
That's the ice cream shop.
Yes. Yeah. So that night, Mike called me.
Was it just somebody had a wrong identification? It was some other
Well,
person?
there was a blonde-headed girl there in black leggings and a white tank top. It just wasn't Layla.
Okay.
And the lady at the marble slab, she tried. She thought she was being helpful. It just is what it is. They followed that lead for like 4 months before they finally tracked down the actual girl that and like interviewed her. And then they actually went back and saw her on cameras all over that shopping center. So it was like, okay, it definitely wasn't Layla. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, they had to go back and start from the time that she came out of those woods and figure something else out. Um,
So at that point, she's just absolutely vanished.
yeah,
And, you had mentioned earlier that like around the, several weeks in, you began to like realize like something very serious is going on.
yeah.
What was it that sort of like, well, let me step back and ask another question. What did it feel like in the days and the weeks when she was initially gone?
Denial. I was in denial at first.
What do you mean?
But also, like, I don't know, it's hard to wrap your head around something like this. Like I said, like my Layla is very strong and she's resourceful. Like that, if I could only ever use one word to describe her, resourceful would be the word. She he can figure things out. She's so smart and like I don't I just I was worried, but on the other hand, I was like, she's so strong and she's so smart and she can figure things out. Like, I don't know. Like, but then it's like she's also fearless. Like I was going back and forth in my head like a crazy person. And then I kept going, okay, if I'm 20 years old, right? Like I remember being 20. I remember like disappearing for a week at a time, meeting a new guy and going off for a week. And you know what I mean? Like there were times I didn't have cell phone. Like there were times that my parents didn't know where I was for a week or so. And I just kept telling myself, like, this is a misunderstanding or she's on a bender or, she's just mad at us all and she'll pop back up when she needs something. Honestly, like that was my line of thinking those first couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and also, I mean, you said it was denial, but the vast majority of missing persons cases, that's exactly what's going on.
right.
That
Right.
the person's going to show up in a few days or a few weeks, or they're on a bender, or they're mad at somebody, or like there's,
Yeah.
what the people who are long term missing is such a small percentage of the total people I mean, of the total number of people who go missing in every year.
Yeah.
It almost, like it's easy to believe because and I think I had a guest on Ed Denzel he specializes in um long-term missing cases, and he said one of the real challenges is police don't really know the difference between what a short-term missing person and a long-term missing
Yeah.
person looks like. But the one thing that's kind of interesting about the story is that um the police in this case seemed to jump on it immediately at 2 a.m. Hours after you had called. They're at your boyfriend's door. They're at
Now,
their
I
campus
have
door
my
next.
theories about that, and I could be wrong, but so Layla's stepdad, BJ, my boy's dad, he was a city firefighter for 15 years. Okay.
Mm, mhm.
He knows a lot of guys on the force. And
So
also when Layla
he
was
was one of their own.
16, yes, but also when Layla was 16, she would run away. She would run away for days and we would have to hunt her down. And the BJ would go to the police department and like demand his professional courtesy and like you
Yep.
better get out there and help me find my kid
Come help me
type
find my dog.
stuff.
Yeah.
Like yes.
Yeah.
And so I do wonder if when her name came through, somebody remembered from a few years earlier that like if you don't jump on it, her dad's gonna be in here,
he'll be
you
he'll be
know?
at he'll be at your dinner table tonight.
I do like I do wonder if that there wasn't some of that because I know that like when Holland went missing, they had a struggle to get her reported. But with Layla, it was like they jumped right on it. But they did have like the same type of mentality I did where like we thought she was shacked up with somebody new or she was just pissed and like, blowing off steam and just trying to stay away from him. And the
Yeah.
more time went on, the more it started to dawn on me that like, oh my God, she's not calling. She's not turning up. This is crazy. And we got to the 30-day mark, and they had to come and get a DNA sample from me and put it in the national database. And that sealed it. Like, this is wrong. This is not right. Something's not right. This doesn't make any sense. And then a few days after that, oh, the Cash App stuff too. But then a few days after that, the TBI agent that works over here in our area happened to be in the office when
That's
the
the
detectives.
Tennessee Bureau of Investigation.
Yes.
Yeah.
He happened to be in the office when the detectives were going over like some stuff on Layla's case. And he looked at the detectives and he was like, Holly Bobo. And the detectives were like, what? And he was like, Holly Bobo Act. She qualifies for the Holly Bobo Act. And
Isn't
that
that the
is,
law after Holly
yes.
Bobo, a Tennessee woman went missing? Yeah.
Yes. And so it's it's the missing and endangered young adult alert. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And so they put her stuff in that database and put in for all that. And so that pushed out a fresh alert to all the law enforcement in Tennessee. And then it also got us back on the news.
Mm-hmm.
And TBI opened an investigation, more or less separate from KPD.
Separate. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
Um, yeah.
so at that point for you, you're beginning to go through the process of like, okay, she's going to show up to, oh, there's something serious going on now. At this point, I know you're still searching for her, but is there any part of you that thinks you're going to find her alive? And part of the reason why I asked that is I noticed that you've been using the past tense.
Yeah.
Um, when you mention her, do you still have hope?
Do I have hope 20 months later?
Yeah,
What is it? A mustard seed of faith?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I carry my mustard seed for sure. But at this point, I have to be realistic. You know what I mean? The chances are very, very slim. There is still a chance anything is possible, but the chances are very, very slim. And I have to be prepared for that, you know? Now, early on, it took months. I mean, it took a lot of months for me to come to terms with that.
yeah.
Because for the longest time, I 100% still believed that she was out there somewhere and I just had to get to her.
Right, right. I you know, one of the things that I really noticed in listening to the story, you mentioned Hollywood, but there are so many similarities in the story between Gabby Petito's case and also Maura Murray's case in this case. And by that, I mean, Gabby was showing all these signs of distress. Like they even have it on videotape when the police, Utah police stopped her and her fiance. You've got, all these little clues that something's going really, really wrong and she's under some measure of serious distress. And, in Maura's case, one of the things I know, having talked to Maura's sister and Brianna Maitland's dad, is that the fact that their disappearances happened so close together in such a similar place brought more attention to the case. And I'm just curious from my perspective, you know, is there a reason why cases like Hollian's and Layla's have not gotten the same kind of attention?
I mean, I think you know the answer to that. They are both, um, they were both active addicts. They aren't seen as like contributing to society. Yes, like you said in your notes, there is that effect that like, young white people get pushed out harder, but also not if they aren't like college students or aren't squeaky clean or, you know what I mean? If they have a mental disorder, if they're, struggling with addiction, people don't latch on to those stories the same way that they do a shiny, bright college kid. Like when Riley Strain went missing, the whole world
in
knew about
Nashville.
it
He was the
immediately.
college student in Nashville who fell into the water, right? Or something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was everywhere on the news.
Mhm.
And, part of me wonders, like, is it not relatable? Then I think to myself, everybody knows a drug addict, right? Everybody has, like, an alcoholic in their family. Everybody. But you know what hit me? I was like, you know what? Everybody knows one, but we don't talk about it. And I
No.
wonder whether part of it is, part of it's they don't fit this perfect model for, whatever the television story or the nightly news. But I also wonder whether a part of it is, when it comes to mental illness, when it comes to drug addiction, just like so many things, the reason why these cases may not get attention is because it touches on a part of what we don't want to talk about. And by that
Yeah.
I mean, like, we don't want to talk about how we're failing people when it comes to the prevalence of drugs or not appropriately having resources for addiction. No, people don't want to talk about intimate partner abuse because of their own shame, because it's such a scary thing to look at. People don't want to talk about poverty. A lot of people want to pretend that there's not poverty and there's homelessness.
Oh, I
And I,
know.
and I wonder whether part of it is it's not that it's not completely relatable. You know, it's that it's relatable to things that we try to avoid. And to me, that's so tragic because I think of things like the news media and, like, as a former journalist, when I worked at the New York Times, you would walk in the lobby and there was this bust of the founder of the newspaper, and it said that our job was to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. And I just
Yeah.
think about the media coverage, and a lot of it is really, like, comforting the comfortable, and
Yeah.
we're not really showing the uncomfortable things. Because when I think of your daughter's life, and I think about why I know when I look at the catalog of people go missing, all the elements were in there. High stress, abusive relationships around her, drug addiction, youth, right? Like, and the judgment of youth. Like, if we want to learn about how these things go wrong, these are the stories that I think we need to know.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. And you put it so well.
How did how did you and the Snap families come together? I know you've been working together and you've galvanized the communities to search for both Holly and Layla.
Um, I reached out. Um, when I saw the paper and the articles and I noticed Helen's age, height, and weight, it really drew me because like she and Layla have a similar size and build and age, and it really like ate at me. So I reached out and got a hold of Helen's foster mother first. And then shortly thereafter, I would find out that my niece was actually with one of the last people to see Holland before she disappeared, the
Mm.
night she disappeared.
So were they in similar circles? What happened
Yeah.
in Disappearance? You know?
So, according to what my niece has told me, Holland was shacking up with this guy, a much older man, 50 some odd years old. Apparently, Holland had
He
an
was
argument.
18,
Holland,
right?
it was Yeah, Holland was 19 and was living with with a biological aunt, and she and the aunt had some type of argument, and then Holland ended up being invited over to this older man's house to hang out and party or whatever. And then she ended up just like staying over for a while, right? Well, this man was renting a trailer on his property to my niece, right? She had moved out of my house, and she had been sort of couch surfing for a while. Somebody gives her this guy's name and says, "Oh, he's got trailers available on his property that he rents. Go see him. Well, she did. And when she signed her lease, she met Holland. Holland was hanging out there. She signed her lease and then didn't like move all the way in yet. She had a handyman there that was like building her a ramp and like widening the doors in the trailer and like
This
fixing
is
it up
her
for
niece.
her.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so one night she's with the handyman and they're at like Lowe's or Home Depot or something looking for something for the trailer. And the landlord guy is calling the handyman, like freaking out. And he's like, I need you to come over here. I need help. I need help. Come by yourself. Come alone. And I guess dude didn't feel like taking her all the way back to where she was staying and dropping her off. So they just rode over to the place and he went inside the house. Right. She's paraplegic. She stayed in the car while he ran in to see what it was the dude needed help with. And he saw Holland on the couch. And according to him, Holland had been badly beaten.
Oh, wow.
And I guess the landlord guy was like pacing the floors and like, I don't know what to do, and this, that, and the third. And the handyman guy, I guess, used Trish as an excuse and was like, let me get her home and I'll come back. And they left. Now he is telling my niece on the way back to where she was going to stay about the situation. And she's like offering up, like, okay, well, if he needs to take her over to my trailer, he can. If you need to go back and get her and bring her to me, you can. Like, she's trying to like offer up solutions because she's not sure how bad it is, right? This guy could be over exaggerating. He might not be telling the whole story. Like, she doesn't know what to think or whatever. And they go home. And actually, she gets a phone call at some point that night from the landlord guy, and he's like fishing to find out what she knows. So she's trying not to like let him know she knows everything that she knows. It was so crazy. And so the next morning, she and the handyman guy show back up on the property to finish doing some work. And he comes out of the house and he tells them that Holland's family picked her up sometime during the night and that everything was going back to normal. Okay. They don't have any reason to not believe this. So they go about their way, right? A few days later, it hits the news and hits social media that Holland is missing. The landlord guy leaves town, goes to Georgia, and Trish calls the hotline and tells them what she knows.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there any belief that the two cases could be related?
We don't know. If they are connected, it's likely just by the fact that a lot of these people know each other because it's all, inner drug circles and that kind of stuff.
Right. That there are interconnections there.
Yeah.
That, and so how have you guys been able to support each other?
Just by being an ear for one another for first and foremost, like we're always venting to each other. And then, we try to come up with different things that we can do in the community. We've done a couple of like walks to bring attention to the missing. We've done a couple of flyer handouts. There's a local young man here. His name is Trevor Lee. He's a missing persons advocate. And he started really getting involved, I think, when Summer Wells went missing. And he's been advocating ever since. And so he also helps to organize different things. And of course, Leslie and I always show up and support him. And
What
yeah.
was Summer Wells' case?
Summer Wells was the little 6-year-old girl who disappeared from her home out in Beach Creek, which is about 20, 30 minutes from where I live. Out in it's like a heavily wooded, rocky terrain, middle of nowhere area.
Yeah. And so it's almost become sort of like a network of people in the area trying to help and support each other. That's one of the beautiful things that I think doesn't get a lot of attention that I found, that like victims' families and loved ones provide such like love and support to each other, and they're quiet about it, and they're not doing it for attention, but they're just
Right.
doing it to be loving and to care. Um, One of the things that I was kind of thinking about in the context of the Kingsport area is you guys have had struggles with drug addiction, struggles with, the economy, struggles with all sorts of things. Do you have any hopes or thoughts about in an area like this, what can be done to maybe like decrease the likelihood? It's not that every kid is going to go missing, but there's a lot of suffering that it sounds like came for Layla long before she went missing. Are there support that you think society, the government, communities can give to sort of help I mean, you know, I don't know why we're all here, but one of the reasons I believe I'm here is to try and lessen other people's suffering. So I have this bias to believe that like government and communities and things like that can help lessen suffering. Is there something that you
Um,
think we could do?
in my area specifically, I would like to see some measures of harm reduction, needle exchange programs, safe injection sites, Narcan giveaway, that kind of stuff. Like we have none of that here. And also, like I know that they tend to chase off like medicinal services and clinics, like methadone clinics, and
Yep.
and like they don't want that
Treatment
stuff in their
facility.
neighborhood, but like you already have a problem in your neighborhood that could
Everybody
help.
wants a right. Everybody wants a treatment program until it's in their backyard.
Exactly. You know, they want to brush all this crap under the rug, especially specifically in Kingsport. They don't and you said it when I was reading the notes that you sent me. You said it's an absolutely beautiful, beautiful area. This place is gorgeous. I fell in love with it when I moved here almost 20 years ago, and it's absolutely stunning and just such a beautiful God-given gift to this earth, honestly. And then it has this ugly, ugly underbelly of just suffering and despair.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like there's something that we need to be able to do to solve for that. And I think that there's probably something in your personal journey because I'm thinking about what you've said, like you struggled yourself, right?
Yeah.
You're
Oh
a
yeah.
person. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you could have just as easily probably been Layla i- i-
Oh yeah.
in the same way that she was. And you've been on both sides of it, your own struggles, and then you watched her struggles so mightily. Like, is there a message that you would have for the world and thinking about something like this, like for how we can be sympathetic to the people who are struggling? How yeah, is there anything that you wish
Um,
people out there knew?
I say all the time, I try to get this message out as often as possible. At the time that Layla vanished, I was really angry at her. And I was struggling so hard to understand her, and I was just pissed. I was so mad, like, at her behaviors and the things that she was doing and the things that she had done. I mean, she had put us through some shit, really. Um, and I wish I wish that I had let go of some of that anger. I wish that I handled better. And so if you are a parent and you are struggling in this type of a situation, I want you to just stop for a moment and imagine if they just disappeared one day.
Mm,
Imagine how you would feel. And I want you to really think about it. Because now, in retrospect, all these months without her, I can see all of the things that I could have done differently. but I didn't have the emotional capacity to because I was so angry at her.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that. One of the things that I've noticed is you've been talking, right? It's always a telltale sign for me when I'm talking to somebody and what I say is they over explain their decisions, right?
Right.
You explain something very simple to me, totally logical, makes absolutely sense why you did it. And then, you give extra details, as I like to say, and that's always a telltale sign for me for somebody who's beating themselves up
Yeah.
for the choices that they made. But if I can say anything to you, you had a menu of impossible choices. Like you didn't have good options, and all you could do is the best that you could come up with. So I hope you let go of some of that guilt and some of that sadness because I don't think there's anything you could have done to anticipate this. I don't think there's anything you could have done. You were just trying to do what was best for your daughter and your granddaughter in a place where there is no menu, there is no guidebook on how to do it. And you were just trying to be loving. And so if I had any message back to you, it would be to let go of some of your um, frustration or guilt because it's not your fault. It is not your fault. And I think if you think about it, like, would your daughter want you to be feeling this guilt and sadness? I don't think so. And I don't know. I mean, that's my message to you is what I see is I see a mom who was trying the best she could with what she had, at each stage of this process. And, when I look at what you've done in your fight to find your daughter, what I see is resilience and determination and drive and a lot of actually good judgment. So I think when you're beating yourself up, keep in mind you had some impossible, terrible choices
Yeah.
um, too. So just keep that in the back of your mind. I was going to ask you as we close. Um, I think there's just something about Layla that I find so beautiful, like her creativity, her energy. 4'10", full of song and energy and all those things. And I wanted to ask you sort of two questions. One is, what would you want the world to know about Layla? And if Layla were somehow listening, what would you want to tell her?
Oh, she is the light of my life. She made me a mom and then she taught me how to be one. I would not be the person that I am today without her. Oh,
She really sounds beautiful.
she is.
Yeah. Well, you helped bring her into the world. So
And she's wild and feisty and tough and resourceful.
what do you hope for when it comes to the case? You just want to bring
Uh,
her home.
I just want to bring her home, whatever that has to look like. What do I hope for? Every day I sit for at least 5 minutes and I visualize what it would be like if she walked in the door.
Mm.
Realistically, I just want to bring her back. I need to know what happened. How did this happen to us? Who's responsible?
But the most important thing sounds like you just want to have her home, one way or
Mhm.
the other. Yeah. Well, you guys deserve it. She deserves to be back home. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up there. I appreciate you coming and having this conversation. I appreciate you being so vulnerable. And, you know, I think one of the things, that's universal for all of us is we suffer, and we suffer in different ways, and they're not comparable. But we all experience loss, and I cannot imagine what this loss feels like, and what this unclear grief, like you don't even know what you're fully grieving is like. But my hope for you is that, two things: that your suffering can be reduced, and that out of this suffering, good things come for other families and other girls like Layla, and you get to bring her home.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us for this conversation. If you'd like to join us for more discussions with me and other listeners, we can be found on most social media platforms, including a listener-run Facebook group called the Silver Linings Fireside Chat. For deeper conversations with our guests and live conversations with other listeners, and to support the podcast, you can also join us on our Patreon at www.patreon.com/The Silver Linings Handbook. I'm Jason Blair, and this is the Silver Linings Handbook podcast. We'll see you guys all again in a few days.